wish I knew how lonely day trading actually is. Not in the obvious way. Not the kind of lonely where you don't have people around. I mean the kind where you're surrounded by information, opinions, charts, content, and noise, but every single decision that matters is still yours. When you first start day trading, it feels exciting. You feel plugged into something. You're watching markets move in real time. You're learning new language. You're part of a world that looks sharp, fast, and intelligent. It feels like you finally found something that rewards effort and thinking. But nobody tells you how quickly that excitement turns into isolation. Because when you place a trade, there's no one to blame and no one to credit. When it works, you don't fully trust it. When it fails, it sits on you heavier than you expected. And that weight adds up. Early on, I thought day trading was mostly about learning setups, finding patterns, getting better entries. I thought once I understood price action or indicators well enough, everything would settle, and it didn't. What actually surprised me was how much of day trading is about managing yourself when nothing is happening, when things aren't going your way, or when things go your way faster than you're emotionally ready for. That part isn't glamorous. Nobody makes highlight clips of that. I remember some of my earliest trading days where I'd sit there staring at the screen, heart rate up, waiting for something to happen. Not because the setup was great, but because I wanted to feel involved. I wanted confirmation that I belonged there. Looking back, that urge had nothing to do with opportunity. It was about identity. Day trading has a way of attaching itself to how you see yourself much faster than you expect. You don't just want to make money, you want to prove you're capable, that you're disciplined, that you're smart enough to figure this out. And that's dangerous. Because the moment trading becomes a test of who you are, every loss feels personal and every win feels fragile. If you're early in your journey and this already sounds familiar, like the video, it helps more people find this before they learn it the hard way. One of the biggest things I wish I knew before I started day trading is that the market doesn't reward intensity. It rewards clarity. When you first start, intensity feels like commitment. You're glued to the screen. You're tracking every candle. You're analyzing every move. You're thinking constantly. You assume that if you're more focused than everyone else, you'll get ahead. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more intense you are, the harder it becomes to make clean decisions. You start reacting instead of observing. You start forcing instead of waiting. You start trading because you're emotionally engaged, not because conditions are there. I've seen this play out with so many traders. They start strong, motivated, hungry. Then slowly that hunger turns into impatience. They don't lose because they don't know what they're doing. They lose because they can't sit still. I've been that trader. I've watched good setups pass by because I was still emotionally attached to the last trade. I've jumped into mediocre trades because nothing happened for an hour and silence felt uncomfortable. I've managed trades too tightly because profit felt temporary, like it might disappear if I didn't control it. None of those mistakes came from ignorance. They came from misunderstanding what day trading actually demands. Day trading demands restraint more than aggression. That's something I wish someone had told me early on. Another thing I wish I understood is that day trading doesn't speed up your progress just because it moves fast. The charts move fast. Your growth doesn't. When you're new, it feels like you're learning rapidly. Every day brings something new. A new mistake, a new insight, a new emotion. It feels like you're evolving. But what's really happening is you're being exposed to the same situations over and over, just in slightly different forms. Fear shows up, greed shows up, impatience shows up, overconfidence shows up. And until you learn how to respond to those consistently, nothing compounds. You can trade for months or years and still be reacting the same way on every red candle. I've watched people do this for a long time. Smart people, hardworking people. They know the terminology, they can explain their strategy, they understand risk on paper. But when the market opens and money is on the line, they're still chasing, hesitating, or interfering. That's because day trading exposes your habits faster than it builds skill. And if you don't know that going in, it's frustrating. You start thinking something is wrong with you. You compare yourself to others. You assume you're behind. I remember looking at other traders online and thinking they must have something I didn't. Some secret discipline, some missing mindset, some natural talent. What I didn't realize is that most of what I was seeing was a highlight reel. What I didn't see were the quiet days, the boredom, the restraint, the days where the best decision was doing nothing. Day trading looks active from the outside. The most successful version of it is surprisingly uneventful. If that idea challenges how you currently think about trading, subscribe. This channel is about closing the gap between how trading looks and how it actually works. Another thing I wish I knew is how much day trading messes with your perception of time. Early on, every day feels important. You feel like you need to make something happen. You sit down thinking, today has to count. That mindset creates pressure. Pressure to trade. Pressure to perform. Pressure to prove you didn't waste your time. That pressure sneaks into decisions. You take trades you wouldn't normally take because you don't want the day to be empty. You hold losers longer because admitting the loss feels like admitting failure. You cut winners short because you want to lock something in and feel relief. That's not strategy. That's emotion trying to control outcomes. Day trading punishes that behavior quietly, not all at once, slowly, through missed opportunities and small mistakes that add up. I wish I understood earlier that not trading is a valid outcome for the day. And there were so many sessions where the best decision would have been stepping away, but I didn't trust that yet. I thought effort meant activity. It doesn't. Effort in day trading often looks like waiting. That's hard to accept when you're new. It feels lazy. It feels like you're falling behind. It feels like you're not taking it seriously enough. But seriousness isn't measured by clicks. It's measured by consistency. If you've ever felt guilty for not trading on a slow day, comment waiting, because recognizing that feeling is the first step to letting it go. I also wish I knew how dangerous it is to tie your mood to your P&L. At first, you don't notice it. A win feels good. A loss feels bad. That seems normal. But over time, that emotional swing starts controlling you. Good day, you feel sharp. Bad day, you feel incompetent. Flat day, you feel restless. That instability leaks into everything else. You second-guess decisions. You revenge trade. You size up or down emotionally. You change rules based on how you feel. I didn't realize how much energy this was draining until I experienced what it feels like when it stops. When trading no longer controls your mood, everything changes. Decisions get cleaner, mistakes don't spiral, confidence becomes quieter. That's when progress actually starts. If you're watching this and realizing that trading has been affecting how you feel more than you expected, share this video with someone who's on the same path. Most people don't talk about this part openly. We're still early in this conversation. There's a lot more I wish I knew before I started day trading. Things that would have saved me time, money, and unnecessary stress. We haven't even touched expectations yet, or why trying harder often makes things worse, or why most traders quit right before they're forced to confront the real work. We'll get there. For now, just understand this. Day trading doesn't fail most people because they're incapable. It fails them because they misunderstand what the job actually is. I wish I understood earlier that day trading doesn't care how motivated you are. Motivation feels powerful when you're starting. You wake up early, you're excited, you're ready to grind. You tell yourself you're going to be disciplined today, focused today, patient today. And for a while that works, until it doesn't. Because motivation fades the moment discomfort shows up, the moment a trade goes against you, the moment nothing happens for an hour, the moment you miss a move and feel that rush of regret in your chest. That's when motivation disappears and whatever habits you've actually built take over. I didn't understand this at first. I thought discipline was something you summoned, something you turned on when it mattered. What I learned the hard way is that discipline isn't something you feel. It's something you've already decided before the market opens. Day trading punishes improvisation. It rewards preparation. There were days early on where I'd sit down without a clear plan and tell myself I'd read the market as it unfolds. That sounded flexible, intelligent even. In reality, it meant every decision was made under pressure. And pressure doesn't make you smarter. It makes you revert. You revert to fear. You revert to impulse. You revert to whatever feels safest in the moment. That's why so many traders say they do their best work in hindsight. Everything is obvious after the fact. The chart is clean. The setup is clear. The mistakes stand out. But when it's live, it feels messy. That mess isn't the market, it's decision-making without structure. I've watched traders with solid strategies fall apart simply because they didn't know how to decide ahead of time what mattered and what didn't. They'd react to every candle, every wick, every small fluctuation, convincing themselves they were being attentive. What they were really doing was feeding anxiety. The market will always give you something to react to. Always. If you don't define what deserves your attention, everything will try to take it. That's exhausting. And it's why day trading burns people out faster than they expect. You might have a good first month, maybe even a good first few weeks. Things line up. The market is cooperative. Your risk is small enough that mistakes don't hurt much yet. You start thinking, maybe this is easier than people say. Then size increases. Expectations increase, emotions increase, and suddenly the same behavior that worked when the stakes were low starts breaking down when they're higher. I've seen traders confuse early success with readiness. They assume because they're profitable now, they're prepared for what comes next. They're not. Day trading doesn't test you when things are going well. It tests you when they're not. It tests whether you can trade the same way after a losing day. It tests whether you can follow rules after missing a big move. It tests whether you can accept being flat when your ego wants action. That's where most people realize they weren't ready in the way they thought. If you've ever had a good stretch followed by a sudden drop in consistency, tap like because that pattern is more common than people admit. You sit down every morning feeling like you're on stage. You want to perform well. You want to execute cleanly. You want to feel proud of what you did. That mindset sounds healthy, but it sneaks pressure into places it doesn't belong. You start trading for approval, even if no one else is watching. You start measuring days as good or bad instead of executed or not. You start feeling disappointed when nothing happens, even if you followed your plan perfectly. Day trading isn't a performance, it's a process. And the market doesn't clap for effort. I remember days where I followed my plan perfectly and ended flat or slightly down. Early on, those days felt like failures. I'd walk away frustrated, thinking I wasted my time. Later, I realized those were some of the best days I could have. Because they reinforced the habit of doing the right thing regardless of outcome, and that's the habit that actually pays. Day trading also taught me something uncomfortable about patience. I thought I was patient. In real life, I could wait, I could plan, I could stick to long-term goals. But in front of a live chart, patience felt different. Every minute felt longer. Every delay felt personal. Every pause felt like lost opportunity. That's because patience in day trading isn't passive. It's active restraint. You're constantly choosing not to act when you could. That's mentally taxing at first. And if you don't expect that, it catches you off guard. I've seen traders who were incredibly disciplined in other areas of life struggle here, not because they lacked discipline, but because this kind of restraint was new. If you're realizing that waiting is harder than taking trades, comment restraint. That word captures a lot of what day trading really asks of you. Trades don't always resolve cleanly. Days don't always end with answers. Sometimes you're left wondering what could have happened if you'd acted differently. If you're someone who likes resolution, that's tough. Early on, I wanted every trade to end clearly, win or loss, right or wrong. Closure made me feel grounded. The market doesn't always offer that. You can make a good decision and still feel unsettled. You can skip a trade and never know how it would have played out. Learning to live with that ambiguity is part of the job, and nobody warns you about it. If you try to force closure, you end up forcing trades. Day trading rewards people who can leave questions unanswered and still move on. That's not intuitive. I wish I knew is how important it is to separate learning from trading. Early on, I learned while trading. Every session was a lesson. Every mistake was a data point. That felt efficient. It wasn't. Because learning mode and execution mode require different mindsets. Learning mode is exploratory. Execution mode is restrictive. Mixing them creates confusion. When you're trying to learn and perform at the same time, you compromise both. That realization changed how I approach the market. I stopped experimenting when money was on the line. I stopped changing things mid-session. I started treating execution as sacred. If you're constantly tweaking while trading, that's not growth. That's indecision. And indecision is expensive. If this perspective feels different from what you usually hear, subscribe. This channel is about the parts of trading that actually determine whether you last. One thing that surprised me more than anything is how much day trading exposes your relationship with control. When you first start, it feels like you're stepping into an environment where skill equals control. You learn entries, you learn exits, you learn risk. You assume the better you get, the more control you'll have over outcomes. That assumption quietly sets you up for frustration. Because the truth is, day trading gives you control over decisions, not results. And there's a big emotional difference between those two things. I didn't understand that early on. I take a clean trade, follow my rules, and still feel annoyed if it didn't work. Somewhere in my head, I thought doing the right thing should guarantee the right outcome. When it didn't, I felt cheated. That feeling didn't come from the market, and it came from expectation. Day trading has a way of revealing how uncomfortable we are with uncertainty, even when we say we accept it. You can intellectually understand probability and still emotionally resist it when money is involved. Most traders fight this without realizing it. They talk about discipline and risk management, but deep down, they still wanted certainty. They wanted reassurance that this trade would work, that today would be green, that their effort would be rewarded. When certainty doesn't show up, they start interfering. They adjust stops too early. They second guess entries. They hesitate at execution. They chase confirmation that never comes. All of that comes from the same place, wanting control where none exists. One of the hardest lessons for me was realizing that good trading often feels uncomfortable. Not stressful, but uncomfortable. You place a trade and there's nothing to do but wait. You watch price move without reacting. You accept that outcomes are out of your hands. That discomfort doesn't go away with experience. You just stop running from it. That's a huge difference, and I remember a stretch where I kept telling myself I needed to feel more confident before taking trades. I thought confidence was something that showed up first, then execution followed. It's the opposite. Execution builds confidence. Confidence that comes before execution is just hope. Day trading doesn't reward hope, it rewards consistency. Another thing I wish I knew earlier is how much energy overthinking actually costs. When you're new, thinking feels productive. You analyze every candle, you consider every scenario. You mentally rehearse every possible outcome. It feels like you're preparing. But overthinking drains clarity. The more scenarios you hold in your head, the harder it becomes to act decisively. You hesitate because you see too many possibilities. You interfere because you're aware of too many risks. Eventually, you don't trust any single decision enough to let it play out. I've seen traders who knew so much they couldn't trade. They talked through every possibility, every exception, every edge case. They were technically sharp and emotionally exhausted. When it came time to act, they froze or overmanaged. What they needed wasn't more information, they needed fewer decisions. Day trading becomes much simpler when you define what matters and ignore everything else. That doesn't make you ignorant, it makes you efficient. I didn't understand that early on. I thought knowing more would make me safer. What actually made me safer was knowing what to ignore. If you're someone who feels mentally tired after trading, even on quiet days, that's usually a sign you're carrying too much information into execution. Clarity reduces effort, confusion multiplies it. You start the session red. Not by much, just enough to feel it. Suddenly, the goal shifts. You're not trading opportunities anymore, you're trading to feel better. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. You widen criteria, you increase size, you take trades you'd normally skip. You tell yourself you're just trying to get back to even. That mindset has ended more trading careers than bad strategies ever have. I learned the hard way that a bad day doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be stopped. Walking away felt like quitting at first. It felt like weakness. It felt like admitting defeat. Later, I realized it was one of the strongest decisions you can make. Knowing when you're no longer trading your edge is a skill, and nobody teaches it. If you've ever stayed in the market longer than you should have just to change how the day felt, share this video with someone who needs to hear that restraint is part of the job. I wish I knew how important it is to protect your mental state more than your capital. Capital can be rebuilt. Confidence takes longer. When you're new, you focus on not losing money. That makes sense. But what actually damages traders long term is letting emotions spiral. One impulsive decision leads to another. One mistake triggers frustration. Frustration clouds judgment. Judgment leads to more mistakes. That's how accounts get blown. Not in one trade, but in a chain reaction. Breaking that chain requires awareness and boundaries. I didn't have those early on. I'd sit there convincing myself I was fine, even when I wasn't. I didn't know how to step away without feeling like I failed. Learning how to stop trading on a bad mental day was one of the most valuable skills I ever built. Day trading doesn't just test your strategy, it tests your honesty with yourself. You don't get better every week. You don't steadily climb. You don't feel progress all the time. Sometimes you feel like you're going backward. That doesn't mean you are. Sometimes awareness increases before control does. You see your mistakes more clearly before you're able to stop making them. That phase is uncomfortable. You feel exposed. You feel frustrated. You feel like you should know better. But that awareness is necessary. It's part of growth. If you quit during that phase, you never get to the part where behavior actually changes. Day trading doesn't reward impatience with yourself. It rewards persistence with the right focus. And that focus isn't on outcomes. It's on behavior. If you're still here and this feels like it's naming things you've experienced but never heard explained, subscribe. This channel exists for traders who want longevity, not quick fixes. Something else I wish I understood earlier is how misleading effort feels in day trading. When you're new, effort feels visible. You wake up early. You sit through the session. You analyze. You journal. You replay trades. It feels like you're doing the work. And because effort is usually rewarded in other areas of life, you expect it to translate here too. But the market doesn't reward effort. It rewards alignment. You can put in long hours and still be misaligned with what the market actually offers that day. You can stare at charts all session and still have zero high-quality opportunities. And if you don't understand that, you start trying to manufacture opportunity just to justify the effort. That's when trading quietly turns into forcing. I remember days where I felt tired after trading, not because I executed well, but because I fought the market the entire time. Every move felt like something I had to respond to. Every pause felt like wasted time. By the end of the session, I was mentally drained and frustrated, even if the PNL wasn't terrible. That exhaustion wasn't coming from trading. It was coming from resistance. Resistance to waiting. Resistance to uncertainty. Resistance to accepting that today might not offer anything for me. Once I started seeing that, everything shifted. I stopped measuring days by how active I was. I started measuring them by how well I respected my boundaries. Some days that meant one trade. Some days it meant none. Those days felt lighter, not exciting, lighter, and that's something nobody prepares you for. Progress in day trading often feels like less, not more. Less urgency, less interference, less internal noise. If you're someone who equates effort with activity, this adjustment feels wrong at first. It feels like you're slacking. It feels like you're falling behind other traders who seem more aggressive. But aggression isn't an edge in day trading. Selectivity is. At the beginning, flexibility sounds appealing. You want to adapt. You want to read the market. You want to stay open to whatever shows up. That sounds intelligent. In practice, flexibility without structure turns into inconsistency. I used to change how I traded based on how I felt that day. If I was confident, I'd be more aggressive. If I was tired, I'd be more conservative. I told myself I was being self-aware. What I was really doing was letting emotions set the rules. Day trading doesn't respond well to that. What helped wasn't becoming more rigid in a technical sense. It was becoming predictable in my behavior. Same prep, same criteria, same stop point, same exit rules. That predictability didn't make trading boring. It made it survivable. I've seen traders avoid routine because they're afraid of becoming robotic. They think intuition will disappear. What actually disappears is emotional decision-making disguised as intuition. That's a good trade. Early on, you assume your strategy works all the time, just not perfectly. So you trade it in every condition, every environment, every type of day. That's a mistake. Edges have windows. Some days support them, some days don't. Learning to recognize when not to trade your edge is just as important as knowing when to trade it. That takes observation and humility. I didn't have that early on. I'd keep trading even when the market felt choppy, slow, or erratic. I'd tell myself I just needed to adjust. What I should have done was step aside. Day trading rewards people who can say, "This isn't my environment." That's not quitting, that's professionalism. What happens outside the market doesn't stay outside the market. Stress, fatigue, distraction, they all sneak into decision-making. I used to think I could just push through. I'd sit down after a rough day and tell myself to focus. Sometimes it worked, and most of the time it didn't. Day trading amplifies whatever state you're in. If you're calm, it stays calm. If you're tense, it multiplies. If you're distracted, it punishes you. Learning when not to trade because of your internal state is a skill most people never develop. They assume more screen time equals more experience. It doesn't. Quality engagement matters more than quantity. You take a hit and immediately want to make it back. Not because the opportunity is there, but because your mind wants balance. It wants to erase the discomfort. That urge is human. But day trading doesn't care about emotional balance. It cares about discipline. The fastest way to turn a small loss into a big one is trying to get back to even emotionally. I had to learn that walking away after a loss wasn't weakness. It was damage control. It was respect for my future self. If you've ever stayed in the market longer than planned after a loss, like the video, because this is one of the hardest habits to break and one of the most important. Another thing I wish I knew is that clarity comes from subtraction, not addition. Early on, I kept adding rules, adding indicators, adding filters, adding conditions. I thought complexity would protect me. What actually helped was removing things, removing unnecessary decisions, removing noise, removing trades that didn't fit cleanly. Every removed element reduced cognitive load. Eventually, trading felt simpler, not easier, but simpler. And simplicity is powerful under pressure. Wins don't feel euphoric forever. At first, they do. They're exciting. They feel validating. Over time, they become quieter. That scared me at first. I thought something was wrong. I thought I lost passion. What I actually lost was emotional dependence. Wins became data points, not emotional events. That's a sign of growth. If your wins still spike your emotions and your losses still drop them, you're early in the journey. That's okay. Awareness comes before control. Another thing I wish I knew is that day trading teaches patience by force. You don't choose patience. You either learn it or you pay for avoiding it. Every impulsive decision costs something, sometimes money, sometimes confidence, sometimes time. Eventually, those costs add up enough that you start choosing restraint. That's when day trading starts feeling manageable. If I could go back and tell my earlier self one thing, it would be this. Day trading isn't something you conquer. It's something you learn how to coexist with. Early on, I treated it like a challenge I needed to beat. Like if I studied hard enough, focused long enough, wanted it badly enough, I'd eventually force consistency out of it. I approached it with the same mindset I used for other goals in life. Effort in, results out. That mindset works almost everywhere else. It doesn't work here. Day trading doesn't respond to pressure. It doesn't reward urgency. It doesn't bend to willpower. The moment you try to dominate it, it starts exposing you. It exposes impatience. It exposes ego. It exposes the parts of you that rush, avoid discomfort, or look for certainty where none exists. That's why so many people burn out. Not because they aren't capable, but because they're fighting the wrong battle. I wish I knew earlier that my job wasn't to be right. My job was to behave the same way regardless of outcome. That sounds simple. It isn't. It means placing trades without emotional attachment. It means accepting losses without trying to fix the day. It means letting wins play out without needing to protect them too early. It means trusting a process even when your nervous system wants relief. I didn't understand how deep that ran until I stepped away from the noise and looked at my own behavior honestly. Not the trades, the behavior. Why did I feel restless on slow days? Why did I feel pressure to trade when nothing was there? Why did I feel the urge to interfere when a trade went against me slightly? Those questions mattered more than any indicator ever did. And the answers weren't flattering. They had nothing to do with the market. They had everything to do with how I handled uncertainty. That's the part nobody advertises. Day trading doesn't just teach you about price. It teaches you about yourself. And if you're not prepared for that, it feels personal in the worst way. I've seen traders quit not because they couldn't figure out the strategy, but because they didn't like what the process revealed about their habits, their patience, their emotional tolerance, their discipline under pressure. And it's easier to say trading is rigged than to sit with that discomfort. It's easier to say you just need a better setup than to admit your reactions are the bottleneck. That's why the beginner phase lasts as long as it does. Not because people are slow learners, because self-awareness is uncomfortable. Once you develop it, though, trading changes. You stop needing every day to mean something. You stop tying your worth to outcomes. You stop letting emotion rewrite rules. Trading becomes quieter. You prepare, you wait, you execute, you walk away. Some days nothing happens. Some days things line up. Either way, your behavior stays intact. That's when consistency finally has room to grow. I also wish I knew earlier that progress wouldn't feel dramatic. There's no moment where everything suddenly makes sense and you feel unstoppable. What actually happens is the chaos fades. Fewer impulsive trades, fewer emotional spirals, fewer days you regret how you behaved. At first, that feels underwhelming. Then you realize that's exactly what you were missing. If you're watching this and you feel like day trading has been harder mentally than you expected, you're not broken. You're just being introduced to the real work. And if this video put words to things you felt but never heard explained, subscribe. This channel is built for traders who want to last, not just start. Day trading doesn't owe you anything, but it does offer something valuable if you're willing to earn it. Clarity, patience, self-trust, restraint. Those don't just improve trading, they carry into everything else you do. If you know someone who's thinking about starting day trading, or someone already in it who's struggling silently, share this video with them. It might save them time, money, and a lot of unnecessary frustration. And if you're early in your journey and still figuring out what this path really demands, comment aware. That awareness is where real progress begins. That's what I wish I knew before I started day trading.